Hey, thanks for stopping by. Today we're going to talk about adding external air to your CO2 laser. What does it take? Why would you do it? And what are the benefits that you might see when you do something like this? I've had external air on my CO2 laser for about 2.5, 3 years now. I added it to my 2460 when I first got it, and I will tell you it was an absolute game changer as far as producing a better quality, cleaner cut. So let's talk a little bit, what does external air mean? Well, currently when you have a CO2 laser, they provide you a small air pump and it's connected directly into your laser. It's usually plugged into the back of your laser, and when you turn your laser on, the air pump comes on. You don't have to worry about it. The issue there is that that air pump normally will only provide about 5 pounds of air pressure to your laser nozzle. And which is fine if you're doing a lot of smaller or thinner cuts. But there is a better way, or I should say a cleaner way to do things. External air means that you would buy a regular compressor of a different size. Typically, I don't recommend anything smaller than about a 20 gallon, and I'll talk to you about why here in a minute. But that external air compressor will deliver a much higher pressure to your laser, which means it's going to blow out that vaporized material much quicker, much better. You have a lot cleaner cuts when you normally go with external air. The top of your cut is very clean. You don't get any of those little brown start marks on the tops of your wood when you cut. That's all eliminated. It can actually take your laser products to the next level without hardly any post-production work when it comes to cutting. So usually what you would do is you would buy an external compressor, you would plumb it into the back of your laser, and you would deliver a higher pressure to your laser nozzle to move that vaporized material better, gives you a cleaner product. And there's a lot of benefits to that. Like I said, cleaner edge, cleaner top, those kind of things. There are a handful of negatives, meaning that once you go to an external air system, you're going to have to remember turn on that air compressor or the air flow to your laser every time you use your laser. It's not automatic anymore. So that's something to consider. If you're a forgetful person or you just don't want to deal with one more thing to do, adding external air may not be the right decision for you. I know for a fact that in a lot of cases, right after I got mine, about 2 weeks later, I was doing an engraving, forgot to turn on my airflow, and I ruined my focus lens. And luckily I had a spare, but the bottom line is there is that process that you absolutely need to remember to do, or you're going to damage some of your equipment as you use your laser. So keep that in mind. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you my setup. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it does have all the parts and pieces that you would need to do a basic setup. For those of you that live in high humidity areas, you're probably going to have to buy a little bit more equipment than I have. I live in a very dry climate and don't have to worry about a lot of humidity like some of you do. So keep that in mind. We'll talk about the sizes of regulators, what they do, how to adjust them, the parts and pieces that it takes to get this all plumbed in. And before you know it, you'll have what you need to make that decision on whether external air for your CO2 laser is a right decision. Let's go check it out. Okay, just to give you a high-level overview of my setup, and then we'll get into the nuts and bolts of what you need for your system. This is a 60-gallon North Star from Northern Tool. Been a great compressor. It also serves the rest of my shop. It comes out here, comes into a manifold, and out of that manifold it comes into this regulator that serves this hose reel. This regulator doesn't affect the blue PEX line that comes out of that manifold. Comes across and down, and I've got another ball valve here, and then just to another simple pressure regulator. Out of that pressure regulator it comes into a manifold. Out of the manifold it comes and it goes into my Nova 35 100 watt. It also comes out of the manifold and goes to my fiber laser, which is just on the other side of my CO2 laser. Now, because I'm here in Nevada, I don't have to worry about humidity much. So you'll probably have to deal with a bigger setup as far as an air regulator and a dryer for your setup. This valve right here is just that if I'm running air to my fiber, I can shut this off, and that way I don't have to pressure up the thunder. So that's what that's all about. That's what my setup looks like. So let's talk a little bit about the components of a pressure regulator. There's lots of pressure regulators out there in the market, and most of them are good. I would buy a higher quality if you can afford it. They will range anywhere from $20 to $100. Especially if you're dealing with a lot of moisture. You want to buy a good quality pressure regulator that has a dryer with it as well. I'll link some in the description that have not only the moisture trap but also the dryer. And it's good if you buy a better quality regulator. When you buy a regulator, one of the things that you'll see is they have either a 1/4 inch NPT or a 1/2 inch NPT. NPT stands for National Pipe Tapered. These are tapered connections here. And so the trick behind when you buy yourself a regulator, let's say that you buy, this is a 1/2 inch NPT regulator. And that's what I recommend. A 1/4 inch is a little bit small, especially if you're going to bring something like this into it because you have a long run from your compressor. Just remember, if you buy a regulator that's a 1/2 inch NPT, your incoming and outgoing connections into the side of this regulator have to be a 1/2 inch NPT. And so when you're buying this little connection fitting right here, and this little connection fitting right here, or this connection fitting right here, those have to be 1/2 inch NPT. So this would be a 1/2 inch NPT to a push to connect to 1/4 inch. I will go ahead and link all of this stuff in the description, Amazon links. And really that's all you got to remember. Once you buy your regulator, it's going to have size, and you need to buy all your goodies that will match that size, and that's really all there is to it. So whether it's 1/2 inch NPT or 1/4 inch NPT, just keep your ingoing and your outgoing connections the same. I do recommend a 1/2 inch NPT. I find that the connections are a little bit more readily available, especially on Amazon, and there's lots of regulators out there that have those connections. So just remember that whatever you buy, you have to buy the connections coming in and going out the same size. Let's talk a little bit about, if you've never messed with an air regulator before, just what this does. So typically you'll have a pressure gauge, you'll have a collection bowl, there's a little filter in here, and then there's a knob on top. And depending on which regulator you buy, you might have to lift it up and turn it, push it down. But this is how you adjust the pressure. So I'll have 80 pounds of pressure coming in to this regulator, because that's what I've got my regulator at the air compressor set at, and I don't want to push 80 pounds of pressure to my laser. So in this particular case, especially when you get it, God only knows where it's going to be. But what you'll have to do is turn this clockwise or counterclockwise to increase or decrease the pressure. And so what this is saying is that as you turn this knob, your pressure gauge is going to go up or down. And basically what it's doing there is it's saying the outgoing pressure is going to be at that rate. The other thing that you typically want to do is you want to turn your air assist on. So push the left-hand green button on your Nova to turn on your airflow, and then dial this in while the flow of air is going. That's kind of the secret. Is you want to make sure that you're delivering it or you're setting this when the airflow is going into your laser and it's actually going out into the nozzle. And that's as simple as they are. Usually, like I said, depending on what kind you get, there might be a cap on this that you might have to lift off and then adjust this. But this is how you adjust your pressure on your pressure regulator. You just turn this one way or the other, and this will go up or down based on what you're doing. To drain the collection bowl, all you're doing, and you can do this with pressure on it, you can actually take this and push this up, and it'll also blow the moisture out of this bowl. And if you shut it down, that's how you drain the air off the system as well. Couple things we want to talk about if you're truly considering the external air process. The first thing is that you'd never want to plug that external air compressor into the back of your machine. They're not made for that, so that's something that you definitely don't want to do. The other thing is if you buy a sizable compressor, you typically want to plug it into another circuit. If you plug it into this circuit, especially if it's a larger compressor, you may see it in your work when that compressor cycles on and off, on and off. So try to put it on another circuit. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you about right quick is if your compressor is going to be away from where your laser is, it's going to be in another room or in a basement or wherever, typically you want to go ahead and run either 1/2 inch or 3-inch line to your regulator, and then 1/4 inch from your regulator into your laser. If you try to run 1/4 inch a very long distance, 10, 20, 30, 40 feet, what's going to happen is the pressure drop is going to be so great that you're not going to get the pressure that you need to your machine. So if your compressor is right next to the machine, you can just stay with the 1/4 inch. Anything beyond that, you want to upscale your supply line to either 1/2 inch or 3/8. 1/2 inch seems to be working great for me. And you can actually get the coiled, just a regular air compressor hoses that are 1/2 inch that will work fine. So it just depends on how long a run you're going to do. Just keep in mind, the longer the run, the bigger the supply line needs to be. So next we're going to go ahead and do some cuts. I'm going to show you what the cut looks like with just stock air versus what it will look like once you upgrade to external air. Let's go check it out. Okay, what we're going to do here is I'm going to cut out a series of squares, one inside the other. This first one that's going to be on the left is going to be at 4 psi, or basically stock air. This is focused at 6 millimeter, and so the first set of squares is going to be 4 pounds of pressure. That's assuming that we got 5 pounds of pressure coming in, and then the second set of squares is going to be with external air on at about 25 pounds of pressure. And you'll see the LED readouts of the pressure gauges. And what I want you to pay attention to is when this laser starts, on stock air you're going to see a brown mark where it starts on all 3 squares. When we go over to the external air side, you shouldn't see anything at all. So let's check it out. What I want to show you here is, I didn't have the fan on at first, but you can see that there's quite a bit of the marking on top where there's none on the external air side. These were both cut at exactly the same speed and power. It was 25 millimeters per second at 80% power. but you can see that there's a dramatic difference between where it starts here versus where it starts here. Now, one thing that you'll notice, this is 1/4 inch Baltic birch, is it's more dramatic on the thicker stuff than it is on the thinner stuff. So 1/8 inch, if I did this same test, these marks wouldn't be as dramatic. But the thicker you go, the worse this gets. You can imagine if we did some text down here where we're starting both exterior on the interior sides of the text, you'd have these marks all over. The other thing that you'll see is on the back side of these, this will have more marks on the back side than the external air. But you can see how nice and clean that external air cut is. Okay, this first one we're going to try is with stock air, 4 psi. We're going to do some text, see what it looks like, and then we'll do some with external air. Let's take a look. Okay, we'll move over just a little bit. Move this over just a little bit. And we'll turn the airflow up. This is at 25 psi. And you can see primarily the edge of the O, where it's burnt and dirty here, the bottoms of the U, in the E. I'll go ahead and try to pull these out and set them side by side, and we can take a quick look. But there's a considerable difference in the cleanliness of this text versus this text. I'm not sure you're going to be able to see it in the camera. Let me pop this out and I can show you. Okay, so I've got those pulled out, and again, this is 1/4 inch material, and what I did is I wanted to pick a pretty small font because this is delicate enough you'd never be able to take a sander to it. Big stuff you can always take a sander to and get all this contamination off, but something fine like this or intricate, you're going to have a problem. So here's the top of the computer and the creations is at 4 pounds, standard air. And then the bottom computer creations is the external air. And what I wanted to point out is number one, I couldn't get this piece out at all. It didn't cut through all the way. And on the back, there was just way too much work to get it out. But you can see the big difference in the contamination right here in this E, right where this fine stuff is. Matter of fact, you lose all the color in this R, where you still have it here. You can see that you've got quite a bit of contamination here in the O. You can still see the O there. Top of the P is pretty contaminated. It's not here. You can see that overall, a lot cleaner look. Let's go down to creations. So looking at like the O, anytime you get some real fine engraving, or excuse me, some cutting, you're going to have a problem with standard air because there's a lot more heat in this general area than you will with the external air. In general, you can just tell that this is a much cleaner look in both words than the stock air. I will tell you that in general, between the brown spots that you get when you start and then just your overall look of things like this text, that's the big reason why to go to external air. Far as speed is concerned, you can gain about 5 to 10% increase in speed, but it's really not more about that as it is that when I take this off the laser, I normally don't have to touch it with a sander. That's the big thing to me. The slight increase in speed is not nearly as important as that I don't have to try to sand these little letters when they're so fine and delicate. So anyway, hope this demonstration helps. Well, as you can see, adding external air can really make a difference in your end product. The biggest reason I think to add external air to your CO2 laser would be the finished product. It will make a huge difference in your cuts, primarily the tops of your cuts. There's a lot of cases that you don't have to do any post-production process. You can cut it out, take it off the laser, deliver it to your customer. And that will save a huge amount of time. It will give you some increase in speed, but not enough to worry about. The real reason why you want to add external air is for nice clean cuts on the sides and also on the top. A couple of compressors that I'll mention, I'll put the links in the description below, but some of the compressors that I know of that people have had really good luck with is the California Air Tools compressors. Anywhere from the small, the 8-gallon all the way up to the 20-gallon. Those can be pretty pricey, but they're very quiet and they seem to be pretty dependable and have a pretty good warranty. So the California Air Tools is one. The Cobalt Quiet Air from Lowe's has been good. I've heard a lot of good things about that. It's got a pretty decent warranty. 26 gallon, it's upright, it's got a fairly small footprint on it, so that might be something you want to check out. It's already got a regulator on it. Really the only thing you'd need to do is add a hose connection to the new regulator behind the machine and plumb it in and you're ready to go. If you're looking for a big compressor, the ones from Northern Tool, there's lots of really good quality larger compressors because the larger compressors are built to run. And so once you get into that $400, $500, $600 range for compressors, they're built to run all the time. And so if you've got a commercial laser shop where you've got a lot of stuff going on, you might have multiple lasers that you're working with every day. I would highly recommend that you just go to the 60-gallon, get it plumbed into all your CO2 lasers, and go that way. So I hope this information was helpful. If you like the content, I'd sure appreciate a thumbs up. Give me a comment. Let me know what you think about the content. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. We're at about 23,000, almost 24,000 subscribers. Appreciate that. And if you have the ability, hit that thanks button and contribute to the channel. It's those contributions that are making this content possible. Really appreciate you hanging in there with me. Have a great day.